So, the first lecture that 1 hour I talked about was overview of part of my lecture, and I came up to mid-sem. Instead of proceeding with again abstract things about how the remaining course is structured, I thought let me run you through my notes, okay, because I have prepared detailed notes. These are also part of NPTEL lecture notes. These are there in your unlike I think what Professor Manibhushan and Professor Gadre are doing, going into actual sitting and doing derivations, I am going to just give a bird's eye view. That's the. So I will run you through the 3 modules that I described very vaguely or very qualitatively, abstractly in the last. I will run you through my notes quickly, and I will also try to show what I mean by storytelling. Okay, how I have tried to weave a story through some examples, and so this is my first module. This is the module which are you able to see? No problem. Are you able to read? Okay, it might be a little difficult to read, but I can explain what it is. Also, since maybe I might run you through a large set of notes just within 1.5 hours, I will not be spending time on any of the derivations in particular. That you can of course go back and see, that's not that critical. You can always refer to the notes and then find out. It's only the structuring of the notes, overall things, and then anything that you want to stop and ask. Let's not have it just one-way discussion. Let it be open discussion. So, well, my notes here. This is my first part of the notes, which I have titled as abstract equation forms in process modeling. So, process modeling, as in because this course I have given for under chemical engineering, so that's why the first chapter is on process modeling. It would be appropriately, if you are doing this, it would be mechanical engineering modeling or chemical or electrical modeling, whatever it is appropriate in your domain. So what I have done here is I have chosen these 5 different subsets which I need to illustrate. Set of linear algebraic equations, nonlinear algebraic equations, optimization based formulations. Where does the optimization formulations appear? Initial value problems, ODE initial value problems, and then differential algebraic equations. So these conceptually cover a wide class of problems that are encountered in the, and so this comes under lump parameter systems. Lump parameter, I suppose all of you know what is a lump parameter system and a distributed parameter system. A distributed parameter system in which models have variables which change with a function of time and space, partial differential equations, whereas lump parameter systems are one in which systems change only with time, the variables change only with time, there is no spatial variation, there is no, so for example, if I want to model temperature variation in this room, I could choose to model it as a distributed parameter system in which each point inside this room has one temperature point, okay, and then the model would be a partial differential equation, variation in x direction, variation in y direction, and variation in time. If you want, of course, z direction, you can have x, y, z and time. It will be a partial differential equation. This will be a very refined model. Of course, you can do a very crude model, okay, by saying that the temperature in this room is uniform and one single number represents no spatial variation, okay, that will be a lump parameter model, okay. You can have something in between, you can compartmentalize, you can say this room consists of 4 compartments. Within each compartment temperature is constant, and so on. One can develop a variety of models for such a situation. So what I have done in this particular chapter, which in the beginning of the course, is to map examples from the chemical engineering domain to abstract forms. Of course, yesterday I said that it is important to do this for postgraduate students. I think it is important to do this for undergraduate students as well. It's not that mapping from real problems to abstract forms, I think is extremely important even for undergraduate students. So of course this may not be possible, particularly I know many of you are maths faculty, and in the first year when they have not done any engineering, okay, it is very difficult to map problems from engineering domain to some mathematical abstractions. That may not be possible in first year. It is also difficult in second year. It is not that easy in second year. In chemical department, first year maths courses are taught by maths faculty. Second year we teach 2 maths courses. One is numerical analysis, which is BTech core course, and we have another course called data analysis, which is statistics. So part of it, what we I think Professor Manibhushan gave you some lectures, last 2 lectures. Some part of it was part of our data analysis course for undergraduate, also postgraduate, both. So those 2 courses we do in the department, and department faculty do teach those courses, data analysis and numerical analysis. And in second year also it does become difficult to map engineering problems into, because they are just beginning. Actually ideally third year would be better, where you can talk to them about engineering problem in that particular domain and say that this is a mathematical abstraction and so on. But second year it is possible, first year it is almost very, very difficult. Okay, so in this particular thing what I have done is I have taken some typical, one of the problems that chemical engineers do is balancing mass and energy. So you have some equipment, and some flows are coming in, some concentrations are coming in, and you have to write balances for mass and energy. And typically if you just write mass conservation laws, the mass balances turn out to be simple linear equations, linear algebraic equations. And the students, any chemical engineering student in the beginning does one course on, the first course is on energy balance and mass balance for some interconnected units. So I have taken some simple example, and then what I show is that this particular example, so you get this set of equations, and how this set of equations actually map into actually how it maps into Ax equal to B. So so for a more complex plant, for two units which are interconnected, you get a 3×3 matrix. If you have in a chemical plant might consist of hundreds of such units, and you might get an equation A matrix which is pretty large. Okay, it could be 1000×1000. But then what is important is that I am mapping Ax equal to B, okay, to a real problem here. Okay, it's very easy in circuits. If you are doing Kirchhoff's law, and you should refer to a book by Gilbert Strang. I don't know how many of you use that book. I think linear algebra. In fact, he has 3 books, and they are just marvelous. I mean, they are best book I have come across. So linear algebra book is of course is a must, and then there are 2 books more. One is computational science is the recent book. Computational science and engineering, I think that is a recent book, and then there is one book on applied mathematics. All 3 are excellent books for teaching undergraduate, postgraduate, any level. Gilbert Strang books are, so Gilbert Strang is faculty of mathematics at MIT. His lectures are available online, okay, and yeah, it's an open course where anyone can listen to those lectures, and his books teach linear algebra completely from geometric viewpoint, simply wonderful. It just reading that book transformed the way I looked at mathematics. So personally, those books are, I found them just wonderful. So it's important to do this. It's important to take a real engineering problem, which see this problem, right in the second year students do this problem. They write a balance, mass in equal to mass out for total mass in equal to total mass out, component mass in equal to component mass out. There is no reaction in this. This is simple, simple what is called as a vapor liquid flash, and some exchange between gas and liquid. So simple mass balances, and then this maps to a problem which is Ax equal to B. Okay. So likewise for every situation, every kind of problem, nonlinear algebraic equations. So some other problem where this is a typical problem in chemical engineering where you want to separate lighter components from a mixture of heavier and lighter components. So what you do is you pump a liquid at a pressure and suddenly reduce the pressure. So some part becomes vapor, some part becomes liquid. The lighter component becomes vapor and the heavier component remains liquid. Let's say you have a mixture of kerosene and some lighter hydrocarbons and heavy oils. If you flash it means you suddenly reduce the pressure, lighter components become gas, and that is a method used for separating lighter components from heavier components. Now that is what they study in their regular course, and then what I have done is this is some mixture. I have taken some example of 3 components, butane, hexane, pentane, and then through I have written the set of equations, and then what I show is that when you combine these equations, the abstract form is something like this. You can write this in abstract form. There are 5 equations in 5 unknowns, okay, and these are nonlinear equations, 5 nonlinear equations in 5 unknowns, and then you actually show that how this particular thing maps to, how it maps to abstraction f1 x1 x2 xn equal to 0, f2 x1 x2 xn equal to 0. So this is an abstraction which I am going to look at afterwards. Okay, so I just do this in the beginning, that look, this is an example, and this maps to this abstract form, and then later on I am going to use all these examples when I give them assignments. So it's not that I just show them abstractions here, but they visit these abstractions when, so I'll be doing algorithm which will be only for this, okay, but right in the beginning they are made aware that actually this means this x4 here means vapor flow rate, L is liquid flow rate, and so on. Okay, so this mapping has been done right in the beginning. Okay, there is one tutorial in which they are asked to classify equations and so on, and this may be some 2-3 classes, particularly if it is postgraduate, because they know most of the models in postgraduate. Undergraduate, this part becomes a little difficult, depends upon when this course is taught. If it is taught in 3rd or 4th year, it's not so difficult. They already know a lot about engineering domain in which they are being trained. 2nd year it becomes a problem, because 2nd year they know little about particular engineering domain, and then you have to really make efforts to get good examples which map into. So this because later on when I do maths, I am not going to look at a specific method for flash. I am going to look at this abstract form, that is I want to solve for f1 x1 to xn equal to 0, f2 f1 to xn x1 to xn equal to 0, n equations in n unknowns is what I want to solve. When I come to Newton's method, solving nonlinear algebraic equations, Okay, n linear algebraic equations in n unknowns is Ax equal to b. Okay, is Ax equal to b. So there is an example that maps to this Ax equal to b, and similarly there is an example that maps into the abstract form that I am going to look at later on. Okay, so this particular example maps to this abstract form, f of x equal to 0. So 0 here, 0 bar is a vector, 0 0, this is a vector of zeros, and this is a function vector. First function equal to 0, second function equal to 0, third function equal to 0. You want to find out the root, but this root is not in one dimension, this root is in n dimensions. Okay, this root is in n dimensions. So this problem you want to, so likewise this module consists of different problems in which, for example, a typical problem is estimate, you are given some model, reaction rate model, A goes to B. I do not know parameters K naught, N, E and so on. I got data for concentration versus time, and then I am expected to estimate K naught, N and E from data. So this leads to an optimization problem. So parameter estimation problem. Professor Manibhushan discussed this kind of problems, right? So I just formulate the problem here and then say that look, this problem maps to an optimization problem. That's why we need to look at optimization. Why do I need to look at optimization? So in the beginning so different examples from different domains, and it's easy to give different examples from different subdomains within chemical engineering at a postgraduate level, because they have done undergraduate, so you can give them examples from 4th year courses, from 3rd year courses, from 2nd year courses. So that becomes easy. And then finally I say, look, then now I have talked about applications in chemical engineering, I'll be only dealing with this. Minimize some function of x with respect to x, where x is a vector in n dimensions and f of x is a scalar function mapping from n dimension to 1 dimension. It's called scalar objective function. So afterwards I am not going to explain, I have shown you how to do mapping once, and then through assignments you have to figure out how to do mapping. Okay. So this is there for everything, for initial value problem. So for example, there is a simple equation here for a system, a simple system, though a differential equation model is developed for this particular simple system. There is a tank. This is like your water heater in your house. There is a stirrer here. This is a representation, of course. There is no stirrer in your water heater at house. This is a symbolic representation. It is well mixed. What it means is it is well mixed. Okay. Then there is an electrical coil. Here I have shown steam coil. In a house water heater there is an electrical coil. Okay. And we are drawing water, hot water from this. Okay. Simple example, anyone can appreciate with whichever domain you are. And then what I do here is I develop a model for rate of change of height inside the tank. So this is rate of change of height is flow in minus flow out. This is simple balance. Mass, rate of change of mass inside the tank is equal to mass in minus mass out. Since density is assumed to be constant, okay, this turns out to be a simple equation for level. Then I am using here the fact that the flow out is going to be function of height. Flow out is going to be function of height, and typically it is square root function of height. So if you want to map to what Professor Vikram Gadre was teaching yesterday, this is capacitance. This is capacitance. This is resistance to the flow. Okay, this is basically capacitive resistive system, except only difference is the resistance is not linear function of height. Resistance is non-linear function of height. Otherwise, it's capacitive resistance system. It's the same thing. Okay, if you do some approximation, then it becomes like okay. So this is the balance of mass. Rate of change of height is coming from balance of mass. you can write energy balance, heat in minus heat out, and then finally doing all the manipulation, it reduces to this simple equation. So this tells you how the temperature changes as a function of time. Q is the heat in, that is due to the steam, or if you have a coil, you will have a coil heater that will. So this is a real problem which they understand from physics, and then I am just writing these two equations together. So finally I have two coupled equations, dH by dt, which is function of H, and an independent input Fi, flow in, which is coming in. Okay. Similarly, rate of change of temperature, after doing all eliminations, manipulations, everything, I get two equations in two unknowns. These are coupled differential equations. Okay. Now these two serve multiple purposes. If I want to study the steady state, then dH by dt equal to 0, dt by dt equal to 0. I want to solve these two simultaneously. Okay. It is an example of two nonlinear equations in two unknowns. I can use it for that. I can use these two equations to talk about dynamics, but of coupled system, that is two variables are coupled and so on. And then what I do is I have described different physical scenarios. What if temperature, so what I would like to study here, for example, I would like to study what happens if the cold water flow rate is increased. Okay, what happens if the Q, heat, is stepped up or heat is stepped down, and so on. Okay, so then I have mapped it to, then I have taken some other example where there is a reaction. Then so I have taken some 3-4 examples. Finally I map it to a differential equation. I say that this system of equation actually maps to this abstract form, and then afterwards I am going to look at these kind of abstract forms. I don't really care to. So there is some other example which is some fermentation, and finally then you will say that, well, you intend to study differential equations of this form, dx by dt is equal to f of x and u. U are some independent inputs like flows or voltage inputs, or some load that you give in a if it is a civil engineering example, some forces that you apply. So or mechanical example, there will be some forces that you apply. So you will have a differential equation dx by dt. X could be a vector. You don't have a differential equation in one variable. Typically engineering systems will have multiple variables. So one thing that many people believe is that teach one variable equation first, then go to two variables. I think right in the beginning we should start with 2 or 3 variables. Okay, so what will happen, first 2-3 weeks they will find it difficult. Okay, but if you raise the bar, they try to jump higher. You don't have to worry about that. Okay, so the students that you are teaching, we get the same students after when they come for MTech, and if they are able to digest, they should be able to digest it in undergraduate or in your colleges. So okay, so this way I am mapping all these equations, and then I am telling that you have abstract forms. So this exercise I have done. So this is the form which I am going to look at afterwards. Coupled differential equations, nonlinear differential equations, which have to be solved simultaneously. Okay, this is the form where I will be using Runge-Kutta, Euler, all those kinds of methods I will develop for these forms. Okay, so all these forms are beginning mapped through appropriate examples, and then this chapter goes on like that. So there are examples of partial differential equations, distributed parameter systems, some heat exchangers, and so on. So you can appropriately replace by examples from your domain, and finally say that. So I conclude this chapter by saying that, well, so I just have to look at 5 forms. I am just going to look at these abstract forms: linear algebraic equations, nonlinear algebraic equations, optimization based formulations, ordinary differential equations, differential algebraic systems, and so on. So these 6 forms abstract forms. I have told you where they map in engineering. Now we'll forget about concentration, pressure, level, nothing. Now we'll get into x1, x2, x3, x4. Okay, so that is this module about. Okay, so the second module which I talked yesterday, well, this is I would say this is optional, but it's, if you can teach this, it helps you to connect numerical analysis, and gives a very unified view of what is happening. Well, those of you who are from control, they may not find this too difficult to. We do this for bread and butter, but or faculty from maths, of course, might find it too simple. But what I think is some concepts need to be taught, particularly. I think yesterday Professor Gadre was talking about inner products. One of the most important concepts that that we use in engineering mathematics, applied mathematics, or I suppose even in the pure mathematics, but I cannot claim much to know about it. So orthogonality, and what is the origin of orthogonality, and how you can define orthogonality not in just 3 dimensions, but any set which can be called as a vector space. Okay, whether it is a set of functions, whether it is set of sequences, whether it is set of matrices. Okay, so on an arbitrary set, what do you mean by orthogonality? Okay, when do you say two vectors are orthogonal to each other? Okay, so this you can formally define. Okay, you can generalize angle between two vectors. Okay, inner product, dot product can be generalized to inner product. Okay, and this significant amount of time I spent, about 2 weeks, about 4 lectures in a week, 8 lectures, talking about these different concepts. What is a norm? And first of all, you begin by saying what is a vector space. And so the reason I am showing this is, yesterday one of the participants said that, is there any book that talks about this together? Okay, so there is no book which talks about this together, but I have detailed notes where you can probably refer to, and so for example, in vector spaces, what I have done is I have formally defined what is a vector space. So vector space is, to put it simply here, vector space is set of objects such that if you take any 2 vectors x and y and any arbitrary scalars alpha beta, then alpha x plus beta y also belongs to x. If this property is satisfied, then it forms a vector space. Okay, this is a fundamental property for any 2 vectors in 3 dimensions. Okay, you take any 2 vectors in 3 dimensions, add them, you multiply a vector in 3 dimensions by a scalar, the resulting quantity or resulting entity, not quantity, resulting entity is also in 3 dimensions, it's also a vector in 3 dimensions. Okay, you add any 2 vectors in 3 dimensions, it's another vector in 3 dimensions. Okay, this property can be generalized to any set. Okay, and those are vector spaces, and all the structures that you actually use in 3 dimensions can be generalized to sets in those particular sets. For example, if I take set of 3 cross 3 matrices. Okay, so this way, okay, I'll show you something. So everything that you need. See, when you are doing numerical analysis, you need all the background of linear algebra, like linear dependence, okay, subspace, and so everything needs to be properly defined, and then that can be done through variety of examples. Okay, so for example, I start by saying that look, linear combination of these two vectors, this is a vector in 5 dimensions, this is another vector in 5 dimensions. If you take linear combination of these are linearly independent vectors, okay. If I take all possible linear combinations of these two vectors, okay, what will you get? What is the dimension of the space that you get? Okay, it is 2, because there are 2 independent directions, okay. Most of the students count there are 5 elements, they say it's a 5-dimensional space. So this needs to be made very, very clear that dimension of a space means it is number of linearly independent vectors, okay. Even if I have a 10-dimensional vector and if I take alpha times that 10-dimensional vector, I am generating only 1-dimensional space. I am generating 1-dimensional space which is scalar multiple of this 10-dimensional vector, and that needs to be made very, very clear in the beginning, because why do I need these kind of, you might wonder why I am talking about n-dimensional spaces. If you are going to discretize a partial differential equation and solve it, okay, you will have to work with discretization points which are 100, 1000 or something like that. So when you are solving problems, you naturally end up with vectors which are 100-dimensional, 1000-dimensional. You better know what you are doing, okay. So it's not something which is too abstract, because it will directly get connected to a real problem soon, okay. So this is not that it's abstract, okay. So likewise, for example, then you start from here. So you start from these examples which are in 3 dimensions. So I start from 3-dimensional example, then go to 5-dimensional example. Then I say that look, just like these are linearly independent vectors, look at a polynomial. Polynomial is also, so now let's define a set of vectors in polynomials. So first vector is p1z is equal to 1, second vector is p2z is equal to z, third vector is p3z is equal to z square. Okay. Now what is a polynomial? A polynomial is a linear combination of these vectors. Okay. So if you understand linear combinations in 3 dimensions, you should understand that polynomial is a linear combination of vectors. What are these vectors? 1, z, z square, z cube, and so on. Okay. So that is the basis, this forms the basis, and then you are just finding another vector which is pz. Okay. So this, once this gets clear, so then you can get into set of continuous functions. This space because you talked yesterday and today I think you talked about Fourier transforms. Set of continuous functions over minus pi to pi, okay, and a basis that you typically use, orthogonal basis, which is cos z, sin z, and so on. This is the Fourier basis, right? And so likewise, then you can say that, well, like this is a set of vectors. You can also talk of all symmetric matrices, n cross n matrices, which is a subspace of all n cross n matrices, and then you can show that all the properties of a subspace hold here. You take what is a subspace? Okay, you take an element in the subspace and add to it another element in the subspace, then the result remains in the subspace, right? So you take a symmetric matrix, add a symmetric matrix to it, you will get another symmetric matrix. Okay, so that's a subspace of set of all n cross n matrices. So how these ideas just cut across different domains, different sets is very important. Then and then you can then. So why do I need to do this? See, for example, I have done this here. Yeah. Then I have connected it to a real example. See, now I have taken this example of solving this boundary value problem. This they may have done in their 3rd year, 4th year. These kind of equations they typically encounter. Okay, in I think almost all engineering domains, except probably I don't know about computer science, but remaining domains there should be some equivalent of this coming up in heat transfer, mass transfer, electrical systems. Somewhere these kind of equations do appear. Okay, and then the solution is this series solutions that we get, sine and cos. Okay, now it's very easy to appreciate for them. This is linear combination of these vectors. This is a vector, this is a vector, this is a vector, and this solution is a linear combination of this vector. So that's why I need to look at vector spaces. I mean, why am I looking at this, function spaces? Because, look here, you need to do this. So it's important. Even these abstract concepts, if you map them to real examples which they are going to encounter, then it's very easy to understand. So this mapping is very, very important. Then yeah, see, this is an example where the solution for this differential equation turns out to be alpha times this vector, beta times this vector, and gamma times this vector. Okay, so these are what are these vectors? These vectors belong to the set of continuous functions defined over 0 to infinity. Time goes from 0 to infinity. Okay, so why do I need to look at set of functions over 0 to infinity? Because solution of this differential equation, it lies in the space of set of continuous functions over 0 to infinity. So that's how you can motivate all these examples. And then this module finally ends with, so when I define, now once I have a vector space, on a vector space I can define length of a vector. Okay, so I need to define norm. Then after you define norms on different vector spaces, then you go to see, we in numerical analysis we talk about convergence of a iteration. Okay, so if my guess is a function and my next guess is another function, my third guess is another function, I have to talk about two functions coming close to each other, and then I need a structure that is length of a vector or length of difference of two vectors. So that's how you can motivate, why do I need to do all this, and then we can define so initially you might wonder, why is it possible that the students just after their BTech, this I have taught to our MTech students and PhD students, they are coming, none of our BTechs get into our MTech project, almost none, very, very few. No, or they do something else. Nowadays they probably join Deutsche Bank, we don't know. The students that we get are from all other colleges, and they are able to take this up, no problem. I have taught at least 4 or 5 batches of postgraduate students, and they don't have problem digesting this material. Okay, so basically it's important that if you teach those abstract concepts, give enough examples, connect it to, then what I do is I move from here to the most important concept, that is inner products. And in inner products, you just show that how dot product can be made into generic thing called inner product. Okay, and here there are two things. One is orthogonality. Okay, so basically how this dot product is formally can be defined into any other product. So this inner product is actually, I will spend a little time on inner product. Inner product is generalization of dot product. Okay, so it is, if you refer to a book on function analysis, you will find this definition, that it is defined like this. It has to follow these properties. Any function that satisfies these 4 properties is called as an inner product. Okay, and any function, as in any function that operates on 2 vectors x and y. Okay, third property is not right. Is lambda bar. Oh, so it should be it should be here.
Yeah.
So
First one is lambda times xy, the second one should be lambda bar times xy.
so okay, I have made a mistake. I should correct it. Yeah, thanks. So okay, so if it is x lambda y, then it is lambda bar, and x lambda y is, it should be, yeah. Okay, so these
Notation is that way. If it is x transpose y, so it will be x conjugate y. So then it will be lambda bar. Depends on how you are defining.
how we are defining the
Here you are defining first conjugate times.
first conjugate times x star x star times, yeah. So yeah, I'll just cross check, because this I think I have taken from Kreyszig. So yeah, it depends upon how you define the inner product.
It cannot depend upon that, because you are defining inner product.
No. So if I am doing x star, if I am doing so if I define this star, if it is a
Second part, no, I mean,
so but then it will be lambda bar, no? If I define it as, if I define here as x star, x transpose y. So if I do x conjugate transpose, then this will be consistent. It will be lambda bar. Depends upon how you define it.
that will depend inner product.
Yeah.
When you are defining inner product on a complex field,
Huh.
then this property, what we pointed out,
It should be other way around. Okay. So in general on a complex thing, if it should be the second one, it should come out to be star. And okay, so in a complex field, then you don't define it as
because on same let's say vector space, we can define different inner product.
yeah. If you do it star also, it will be, I think it will be equivalent, no? Because if you pull out lambda star,
Yeah, but it has to be.
definition has to be like this, not like this. I see. Okay. Okay. So you this. So you basically now with this you can actually give an examples how you can define inner products on different spaces. For example, you can start with n dimensional vector space, and they are familiar with this inner product. This is what we keep using in most engineering definitions. Okay. Then you can move on to weighted, where W is any positive definite matrix. Then you can define inner product by taking you can define inner product on Cn, where you can define it as xi bar yi and so on. So then you move on to saying that, well, set of functions over AB, how do I define the inner product on set of continuous functions over interval AB, and then you define inner product here. And then once you have equivalence of dot product in some other space, okay, you can then use that property of dot product, that is dot product is 0, means orthogonal vectors, to have a something conceptually similar in other spaces. Okay, so that is what you can emphasize. And so this way you can go on giving examples. And the most important property here, of course, is what is called as Cauchy-Schwarz inequality, which is also nothing but restatement of the fact that well, Cauchy-Schwarz inequality is this is called Cauchy-Schwarz inequality. This is actually restatement of the fact that mod cos theta is less than 1. Okay, so it is just a restatement of the fact that mod cos theta is less than 1. So all these things if you do in the beginning, and then what I do is I talk about Gram-Schmidt orthogonalization. So given a set of vectors which are non-orthogonal, how do you construct orthogonal set? This you can do in 3 dimensions. Okay, and then you can continue that and show how you can do that in set of say polynomials or set of continuous functions, and then you, for example, this Gram-Schmidt process is a very standard process. Gram-Schmidt process is given a set of non-orthogonal vectors. There is a procedure to construct set of orthogonal vectors. Okay, and this is, you take the first vector and create a unit vector. Then you take inner product of the second vector, that you project the second vector along this direction, subtract it from this x2, and then normalize it. You get the second direction. And what you can show that E1 and E2 are perpendicular, because if you take inner product of E1 and E2, it will come out to be 0. Okay, that you can show very easily from these manipulations. Okay, so likewise, you can generate the set of orthogonal vectors, and this you can show how you will do these orthogonal set. I start from 3 vectors in 3 dimensions and create an orthogonal set. And then what is important to generalize is, from this example, then I move to set of continuous functions over -1 to 1, and then show that actually if you take vectors here as 1t, t square, t cube, and these are not orthogonal vectors. If you start from these vectors, you can and if you just follow the procedure of Gram-Schmidt orthogonalization, what you end up with is the so-called Legendre polynomials. So algebra is not important. What you get is this so-called Legendre polynomials. In my experience, if I just tell them that, look, Legendre polynomials are defined as, okay, it's very hard to digest. At least it used to be hard to digest for me. So probably I do this because I found it difficult to digest. So, and then what you can tell them that like this is done, you take some other set. Okay, if you change the domain from -1 to 1 to 0 to 1, you get what are called as shifted Legendre polynomials. Okay, then you change the set to -infinity to infinity, and you take the basic vectors as this and so on. Okay, what you get is what you get here is, I think these are Hermite polynomials, or these are Hermite polynomials. Okay, then you choose another set 0 to infinity, you get Laguerre polynomials. So all these monsters which later on you meet when you do analysis, right in the beginning you know why this is being done. Why? First of all, people can appreciate that orthogonality is very, very important in 3 dimensions. If it is in 3 dimensions, it is important in any other space. Okay, and if I can create a orthogonal set in 3 dimensions, I can create an orthogonal set in any other dimension. Okay, so then I tell them that, look, inner product you can define your own way. You call it by your name and start with some vectors. Okay, and create an orthogonal set. Give it your name. Does it matter? Okay, whether it is important, whether it is useful in some solving some problem or not is a different story. But you should have confidence that I can generate an orthogonal set. What is that? Okay, so that thing is important, because then if you do this, then it becomes very easy to present the theory later on, because a lot of it is, well, I also do things on matrix norms, because you need matrix norms later on. When you talk about well conditioned matrices, ill conditioned matrices, you need to talk about matrix norms. So especially I do something on matrix norms. So this is about I know.
That's a clear injustice on us.
I know. It is not. No. It is, what I would say here is that, see, for example, when I was a student here.
Then we can appreciate actually what you were talking. We could appreciate
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the engineers if they could appreciate so much. So it's so full packed.
It is packed. It is packed. And then when I tried to share these notes with my colleagues in the department, people would skip this module. They would teach
And for us, we would teach only
this.
So that is where
No, but what I feel is that maybe you should go through and check whether I have made errors. It will be helpful for me. But what I think is that sensitizing students about this is very important. Because with this background, they can see through connections. Okay. Otherwise, it is not possible to tell them that actually everything is connected and you are actually going to solve only one equation. So
No, many cases where convergence is required.
yeah.
I mean, unless we know these things, we cannot convince the students.
Yes. No. But there is one more thing. Let me share this. When I was a PhD student here, I did courses by Professor Limaye in analysis, functional analysis, and I think mostly by him and Rekha Kulkarni also. Now there, in analysis course, they always talk about convergence of a sequence. Okay. And in the course, I used to wonder why are they talking about convergence of a sequence? Where do you get sequences? Okay, so and why would somebody think of convergence of a sequence? Now, of course, that time you just solve it as a maths problem, and then maybe there are somewhere it's happening. Then when I started teaching this numerical analysis course, it suddenly flashed to me that iterative processes actually give rise to sequences, and then you need to talk about convergence of sequences. Okay, so now if you connect the two, saying that look, in this solving this reactor problem, you are going to get a sequence of vectors, and that's why convergence of a sequence is important. Okay, so then so if they are sensitized, maybe afterwards they are motivated to read more. Okay, so but it's important that they are sensitized about this. 8 weeks of this, 8 lectures of this is injustice.
it won't be disconnected like module 1 is totally you are giving about the mathematical modeling of the real life situation, then suddenly coming to full mathematics.
Yeah,
it
so
will be- maybe
it is disconnected, and then I have to tell them that look, for sometimes you are going to see stars. Okay. But believe me that just now for the next 8 lectures, believe me this is important. Okay, and then this at the end of the course you will appreciate why I was talking about this. Okay, so that is So now here, because I have talked this in this module, when I go to okay, so now what I am able to do, because I have talked about vector spaces, I can show that all the 5 problems are actually just one problem. There are no 5 different problems. There is nothing like solving algebraic equations, nonlinear algebraic equations, differential equations. You are solving a problem which I wrote yesterday, Tx equal to y. What is t, what is x, what is y is changing. Okay, sometimes that t is a matrix, some cases it is differential equation, some cases it is partial differential equation. Okay, basically t operates on vector x, gives you another vector y. Okay, and so what I have done here is I have just said that I have a transformation. I define what is called as a transformation. Okay, from a set, one set to other set, y is equal to tx. Okay, and then I define what is a linear transformation, and of course what is a continuous transformation, and then then I show that how everything can be looked upon as Tx equal to y. Any problem is just Tx equal to y. What x belongs to, what y belongs to changes. Okay, every problem is just Tx equal to y. So start from Ax equal to b, then set of this kind of a differential equation, then integral equation, then ODE initial value problem, then boundary value problem, then partial differential equation. I just have to define what is transformation T and what is Y. So basically everything is mapped into one problem, Tx equal to Y. That I don't do, that every linear transformation is a matrix. So then I say that there are only three problems. Direct problem, this I just mentioned in my earlier lecture. The direct problem, given operator T and X, find Y. Given inverse problem, given T and Y, find X. And identification problem, given X and Y, find T. Okay. So these are the three problems in engineering, done. So actually course is over. Okay. So now what we are going to do is only details. So you have understood what needs to be understood. So now we look at the actually how to do it. Okay. So that follows. Okay. So then what is to be emphasized is that, look, you are never able to solve this problem, Y is equal to Tx, in most of the cases, 99% of the cases. Actually, lot of the engineering mathematics that we teach is for the linear cases where analytical solution exists, and that is probably not even 1%. 99% is where you cannot solve, and what you can solve is you discretize the problem, you convert it into an approximate form, and then you solve an approximate problem. Now the original problem, which is the partial differential equation, and the transform problem can look completely different. Original problem can be partial differential equation, transform problem can be nonlinear algebraic equations. Okay. So you end up solving something else. Okay. So that is important to convey, that look, then even when you are solving this, you are not able to solve it exactly. So there are multiple levels of errors. Okay. First level of error is when you discretize from here to here, and then how you discretize can play a role in accuracy. Okay. So the same problem can be discretized through multiple ways, and you can control accuracy by intelligently discretizing is what needs to be communicated. So this is first level of approximation. Second level of approximation comes when you try to solve this numerically, and the third problem comes because, of course, you can never represent numbers exactly inside a computer. You have a limited set of maybe only rational numbers are there, even a subset of rational numbers. Not all rational numbers are there in a computer. So there is another level of approximation which comes because you are solving it by computer. Okay. So there are so they have to be told that, look, at the end of it you can get a garbage. Okay. So I have examples, for example, in linear algebraic equations showing that even 3x3 system, okay, if it is ill conditioned, MATLAB also can give you garbage. And this needs to be stressed, this needs to be told, that you have to understand basic theory. Don't just because computer is giving it, just because MATLAB is giving it, doesn't mean the answer is correct. Okay. System is ill conditioned, you will get garbage. Okay. Even though it's not that garbage is in, but garbage is out because there is a fundamental problem. Okay. And you should be able to distinguish between when the system is ill conditioned and you have limitations in getting a good solution, and when the system is well conditioned and you are getting a garbage, which means you have made a mistake. Okay. So these two things have to be carefully separated, otherwise and this can be done by giving examples where things fail, not by giving examples where things work. Okay. So that is very, very crucial. So here then what I stress is that now, look, you are not able to solve, you will not be able to solve this problem. So you have to discretize, you have to convert into a computable form. And then what are the methods of what is the method of doing it? So you do it using what is called as this fundamental result called Weierstrass approximation theorem. Okay. So this assures that any continuous function can be approximated as a polynomial function. That is why we in engineering mathematics or in engineering applications we keep using polynomials left, right, center. The reason is foundation is this particular theorem. It doesn't tell you how to construct the approximation. It tells you you can construct an approximation. It's an existence theorem. Okay. It doesn't tell you what is the method to construct the approximation, but it tells you that you can always approximate any continuous function using. So this gives a basis why many of the models are used in engineering, and then what I tell them is that look, majority of the methods that are used can be looked at through either Taylor series expansion or through, so mathematicians should correct me if I am wrong, polynomial interpolations is another major line which is used to do approximations. The third line is least square approximations. Okay. So these three methods are used to discretize the problem, that is to convert the problem from here to here, and you are not going to solve this problem, you are going to solve this problem. You are going to solve this problem. Okay.
Again, from cases where this discretization is not possible.
Where discretization is not possible.
Representation is not possible.
Polynomial representation is not possible. Well, if there are no continuous functions, continuity is very important. Continuous functions can be represented by polynomial approximations. Discontinuous functions,
What you do is you take it in the interval piecewise continuous and then discretize it over the continuous.
piecewise continuous approximations you may have to do.
Piecewise continuous could make, so that means they are discrete only, no?
Yeah, if it is
So you don't need to
discretize. So continuity or piecewise continuity at times we invoke. Yeah. So you need dense set, otherwise. No. But see, this is like what I would say. This is too elementary for. So the course that you would do in analysis would be much more dense than this. But you need to know dense set, otherwise, and it is not difficult to appreciate dense set, because rational numbers are dense in, and then you can tell that you are able to do computations. See, you can connect it to a real problem by saying you can do computations because rational numbers are dense in real numbers. So that example I have given here, that I think, but I have not given proofs. I have just no, that is not. Statement is sufficient. Statement is sufficient. Okay.
Just now is telling we don't know the
Even that,
terminology.
yeah, for the many of engineering teachers don't know.
As
We
it
really
just
have
to-
some refreshing kind of.
as
Let's
it-
have vector spaces only, or direct problem, how is it?
Yeah. So
Terminology, symbols, we are like alien to such kind of.
yeah, so probably you can listen to my lectures. I wouldn't advise them to listen to my lectures. They will find a lot of errors, but because I have made a lot of bold statements here and there. So, but then what I feel is there is a gap between these people and engineers, and that needs to be bridged by somebody. So either engineers going and reading maths, or maths people coming and reading engineering, and then because this is important for us, I think it is important, particularly if you are doing research, you should know these foundations, and vice versa. I think they can benefit from engineering examples because there are rich problems, which cannot be solved by many simplifications. They assume that okay. So now Taylor series approximation. For example, Taylor series approximation. I just give Taylor's theorem in one dimension. Then in I think in n dimensions, the same theorem generalized to n dimensions. Okay, and so yeah, with appropriate examples, and then what I do is, okay, so now this is where there is a okay, so now I'm going to, so this is all abstract, okay, now I'm going to apply it to solve a boundary value problem directly right in the beginning of the course. So this is maybe in the 10th lecture or 9th lecture, okay, so which is normally the numerical analysis which is solved at the end, boundary value problem. So I take this a system PD, boundary value problem, and then discretize this simple thing. I discretize. I show them how to approximate first order derivatives and second order derivatives using finite difference, okay, and then take an actual example from, this is fairly simple, this all of you must have done, approximating first derivative using central difference method, and that is a derivation for that, okay, and then you actually take a problem, second order boundary value problem, and then show that how to discretize, and then what is important here, what I want to stress here is that this is straightforward. Then you just take a real problem. This is temperature distribution in a plate, conduction problem, okay, heat transfer in a simple plate. There will be equivalent problem in other domains, okay, and then you take a real engineering problem, and then you show that you discretize this. When you discretize this and write the set of equations, you actually get Ax equal to y. So you are getting actually linear algebraic equations after discretizing a boundary value problem, ODE boundary value problem, using finite difference method, okay, and then here I need all the concepts, because depending upon the discretization point, this X could be a vector which is n dimensional, which is very large, 100 dimensional, 1000 dimensional, whatever you decide to have discretization points, okay. So this could be example where they need all the concepts that I have talked about, okay. They need large dimensional matrices. Then in fact this example later on I used to talk about sparse matrices, because you can show this matrix is actually a sparse matrix, lots of zeros, and then you need to come up with special solutions for that, and so on. So this maps to a real problem, okay. So this is very, very important. And then some of these examples I have used throughout my this. So same example I will use when I go to orthogonal collocation, interpolation, polynomial interpolation kind of approximations. Same example I'll use when I go to least square approximation, okay. So it's important, see it's important at research level or at postgraduate level to emphasize that research many times involves looking at the same problem from multiple viewpoints, okay, like what Professor Manibhushan did yesterday, least square problem, algebraic viewpoint, you get you can get something out of it. You go from geometric viewpoint, projections, you get certain things out of it. You go from statistical viewpoint, you can get confidence intervals, you can get prediction intervals, you can get something different out of it. So different facets of the same problem give you different outputs is what is important at a postgraduate level, because many times postgraduate problems, research problems are of that sort. You are trying to relook at the same thing again through some different viewpoint, and this gets emphasized if you do this, okay. So that is so this is where some kind of a story comes, that you have chosen some theme examples and those theme examples run through the course, okay. So this theme example I'll use later on. So this example here, this example is one of my theme examples. This theme example I'll use later on when I talk about sparse linear systems, because this is a sparse linear system, there are so many zeros and only 3 diagonals which are non-zero, okay. So same example I can use to motivate sparse linear systems. Same example will be given to them for solving the problem in the assignments, okay. So you are actually building a story around some theme examples, and then you keep teaching all the concepts, you come back to that example and say that this problem will be solved using my method like this. Okay, so that I find very important, so that they can connect to real problems. They can also get a feel that one problem can be looked upon from different viewpoints under different context, or different viewpoints in the same context. For example, you want to look at accuracy of discretization. Okay, maybe polynomial interpolation gives better accuracy than finite difference, and then often people who vouch for collocation based methods, they say that you need fewer points, collocation points, or fewer discretization points to get better solutions. Accuracy rate of convergence is better, and so on. So this is another my theme example. Of course, this particular example is from chemical engineering, so you have to find similar examples. This is a second order differential equation, and this second order differential equation, subject to boundary conditions, actually gets transformed into nonlinear algebraic equations. See, because here I have this term c square, because of this term c square, I get nonlinear algebraic equations which are coupled. Okay, and finally I map it to a nonlinear algebraic equations. Okay, so abstract forms I am revisiting here again. Okay, I am also using many of the concepts of state space or the space vector spaces that I have used, and then I am talking about discretization, approximation theory, but at a very applied low level, not at the level approximation theory is formally taught. Okay, so if some of them get interested further, well then good. Okay, there are courses in maths department which they can take and take it further. Okay, so likewise, now this particular problem I would revisit when I talk about interpolation based approximations. Same problem I'll talk about when I revisit least square based approximations. Okay, so discretization, then from boundary value problems right in the beginning I am talking about PDE discretization. So finite difference method can be used to discretize the PDE, and then I take some example. I take an example here again, and so this is a partial differential equation in time and space, and I show that how discretizing this in space converts it into set of differential equations. So what is important is to stress that there is an original problem which you cannot solve exactly, you transform it and you solve the transform problem. Okay, transformation might look completely different. Okay, original problem is a PDE, transform problem is ODE, initial value problem. Okay, so what you end up solving and what you want to solve are different, and finally you have to stress that whether the solution makes sense or not, you have to use your engineering intuition, looking at the profiles, looking at the solutions, and then make a call whether this numerical solution makes sense or it doesn't make sense. Okay, so this process of taking same examples and then mapping it into is very important. So then I think I have taken this so-called Laplace equation. Well, in Kreyszig's book you will find this not in terms of temperature, but here I have related this to a furnace. If you want to know temperature distribution in a furnace, you approximate that variation is only in XY directions, and you say that there are 3 walls which are insulated and 1 wall is open to the outside. Okay, there is a heat exchange between 1 wall and the outside wall. So then you write boundary conditions, and then you get, and what happens here is in this particular problem, this partial differential equation gets transformed to Ax equal to b. If you discretize it, it's a linear partial differential equation. Discretize it, you get Ax equal to b. Okay, so this finally becomes a set of linear algebraic equations. Okay, and then Algebra you can read, it's not that okay. Finally you get Ax equal to b. Okay, finally, and then this also motivates why we have to look at large dimensional systems, why we have to look at sparse systems. Everything in one shot is motivated. Then later on, post midsem, when I start talking about sparse systems, okay, there is no surprise. Okay, then they know that there are so many situations where you get sparse systems. Okay, so it's better that you have special mechanisms to solve sparse linear systems. Okay, so I don't have to get into motivating why you need sparse linear systems. But if I do sparse linear systems in the beginning, okay, and then say in the end that this example will lead to sparse linear system, it's not the same thing. Okay, actually seeing the monster first and then looking at a device that will kill the monster, is important. Okay, just giving them a device and saying that no, if you shoot, you can actually kill a tiger with this. You have to see the tiger first, and then give them a gun to shoot the tiger. So, well, that's my personal opinion. So you can contest. So this way. So these examples, for example, these examples I have then, later on I go here to discretization using polynomial interpolation. So here I talk about interpolation polynomials, and then go into orthogonal collocation. So this orthogonal collocation is one of the very popular method of solving partial differential equations or numerical method. So, but again, after introducing the theory here, what I do is I again revisit the same example, same reactor example, same Laplace equation. You come back and discretize it using new method, and then actually what I have done is I have compared solution obtained using one with the other, and shown that actually with less number of collocation points you can get a good solution as compared to finite difference where you need large number of finite difference points. So now you juxtapose the two discretization methods and say that look, there are multiple methods, but there are advantages of using this collocations over finite difference. Finite difference is simple to understand, collocation is little difficult to understand, but you can, there are dividend to be paid for doing this. So I think I should stop this in the 2-3 minutes. You could, yes.
But why you need finite difference method is because you have only some experimental data. You only have some.
No. There is no. Laplace equation you can solve analytically if you have nice boundary conditions. Suppose you have weird boundary conditions. See, suppose I want to solve Laplace equation for this room where heat transfer across the door is different from this wall and there, then you cannot construct analytical solutions. So
Even if you cannot integrate those boundary conditions.
then you cannot find analytical solutions. So when there are very nice, well behaved boundary conditions, you can solve it analytically. But well, actually, I used to wonder why we should do numerical solutions for Laplace equation. Then I suddenly realized that if there are strange boundary conditions, you cannot solve. So you need numerical solutions.
You have experimental data available with you. You don't have the
Function values.
You have to.
Yeah, you have to use numerical methods. No, other thing is that it is also useful when you want to benchmark. So if you have an analytical solution, you can use it to benchmark a numerical solution, and at least for understanding it is very useful. It's very. So before we split, before we stop, do you have any comments, any questions, any discussion that we should, any point to be discussed? Or was it too complex? Do you think this was too complex for PG students? I think they can take it. I think they can.
Actually, this was giving us complete vision of the system by which we should proceed further before going through the research work.
Yeah.
It was very
So
Taking a
complete
an example and solving it mathematically would make the student solve it.
Always interesting, yes, yes. So what I find is about 70 to 80% of the students at the end of the no, this is not. Yes. No. See, first year also it is possible to come up with examples, but they are very simple, very simple. Electrical circuits, or falling in the gravity, motion. You can come up with engineering examples. Yes. Yes. There is nothing earth-shaking about it. Yes. And then because I think we don't connect at that point, that maths doesn't stick afterwards. They forget. Yeah. No. So, but postgraduate you can do all this.
First thing we can do, when they teach mathematics in first year, depending upon the branch, like they are teaching Fourier series, so they should at least say some words about Fourier series. When are they going to use in engineering? Sometimes, because what happens with me many times, I am teaching. Previously, I was teaching signal system, now DSP. So when I come to DSP, I have to revisit everything.
Everything.
I have to tell them what is the Fourier series, and then they just pretend or they actually that we have forgotten what we have done, and at that time they only know how to solve it. But what are the applications of those things? We are not known.
Yes.
So at that time, if there is some connecting link, we can directly
No, but it is important that engineering faculty provides
those things.
examples to maths faculty. It's important as an interaction.
Yes. That
Okay.
we were discussing yesterday.
Sir, your point is very good. Interaction is
Yes.
important.
Yes.
And that is what we were discussing with Dere madam yesterday, that means we will go and we will communicate and we will talk to each other and then we will say what are the
No. Actually, one suggestion that DT has is that if we can call same participants again, you can think about creating examples. That is what So it is not possible to do it in 3 days, but maybe after 4 months we can meet again and then try to see whether we can create a repository of examples that can be used for teaching engineering maths. So that has to be contributed by engineers, not and that can be used while teaching.
And fortunately, we are having engineers from all the branches.
All the
mostly.
branches, yes.
Like we are having from mechanical system and
Yes,
products
yes.
and everything, ENTC.
Chemical and everything, yes,
They can have the examples of their domain.
yes.
Conduct the CEP course next in the same participants.
And probably we can create a some Google page where you share all those as a community where also. Okay, thank you. Let's meet tomorrow. Yeah.